Introduce the two candidates for Spokane County Prosecuting Attorney, Breean Beggs and Larry Haskell. You will each have 1.5 minutes for your opening statement. We'll begin with Mr. Beggs.
I'm Breean Beggs. I'm running for Spokane County Prosecutor to reduce crime and save taxpayers' money. I've been a lawyer practicing law for 10 years longer than my opponent. I'm the only one of us who's managed law firms and supervised lawyers. But I have broader experience as well. I've done civil litigation. I understand land use law, employment law, clean water law, all areas of law that the elected prosecutor has to know in order to serve the entire county of Spokane. Most importantly, I have directly represented crime victims, hundreds of them, getting them actual compensation. You might know me best from representing the AutoZem family and leading the reform efforts of the Spokane Police Department. I'm asking for your support tonight to lead the prosecutor's office, to update and reform the entire criminal justice system in Spokane County. Right now, we're spending 74% of our budget on criminal justice. The jail's overflowing with the mentally ill, and property crime is rising far faster in Spokane than the rest of the state. 2 years ago, I worked with a group of criminal justice professionals to come up with some answers. We developed some proven reforms that would save us money and keep us safer that we called smart justice. The city and the county have adopted most of our proposals, which they call the blueprint for reform. I'm the only candidate that contributed to that, and I'm most qualified to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Haskell.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight, and also the city of Spokane for allowing us to use this great facility. I've been a deputy prosecutor for over 13 years. I have done over 50 criminal trials, and I am very experienced in the criminal justice system. If elected, I will make sure that the office supports the Constitution and the laws of the state of Washington, and that we comply with the statutory duties of the prosecuting attorney, which includes to protect the public, to hold offenders accountable, to restore victims, to seek proportional punishment, to reduce recidivism, and to keep the public safe. In doing that, I intend to use the reforms that we have in place that came actually long before Mr. Beggs has indicated. Criminal justice reform has been going on in Washington State for a long time. Our office uses those reform measures, and we will continue to use those evidence-based measures. I will work with the legislature for the necessary legislative reform to help us do what we need to do. We will reduce recidivism, and we will protect the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go into some questions. You'll have a minute to answer these. You've each touched a little bit on some priorities, but I want you to hone in on a primary priority for your office, and are there any particular changes in procedures in the office that would be required to institute your priority? Mr. Haskell?
Yes, actually, I've divided the priorities for outside the office and inside the office. Inside the office, I'm looking at taking supervisory input to change some of the structure that we have in the office to more efficiently do the criminal justice reform effort that's in progress, and also to make us more accountable. I want to make the office more accountable not only to each other, but also to the county commissioners and also to the public in general. In addition, I want to increase the visibility of our office in the public arena. In doing that, I intend to be more active in the community and encourage my deputies to be more active in the community as well. I will attend community center meetings and meet with community leaders and take their inputs. I will make sure that we make full use of the Law and Justice Council recently reestablished by the county commissioners, and that we are out in the public and showing them that we also are a stakeholder and that we care about what it is their concerns are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Biggs.
The number one priority is to reduce crime and stop people from reoffending. Right now, under the current system, statewide, it's estimated that 50 to 60% of people coming out of prison are going to reoffend within 3 years. The first reform I'm going to implement is that we're going to measure our office on how we're doing on that. And if we can't get it down below 50%, well below, we're not doing our job. I'm going to measure individual deputy prosecutors so that we know what's working and what's not. There are some great reforms that we could expand, like drug court, mental health court, veterans court. The reoffense rate for that is just so small compared to the normal business ways things are done. So we're going to do that first, because that's what the community needs to know, is that we're going to be safer and we're going to spend much less money being safer. Secondly, whenever there's a crisis, if a prosecutor is being investigated, if a murder happens in the bus plaza, you're going to hear from our office of what's going on and how we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay, thank you. So now we want to move and talk a little bit more about the Smart Justice Campaign initiative. We've touched on it, and want to clearly hear the support for that. And what would be the next step in implementing those things? We'll start with Mr. Beggs.
There are several steps if you read the Blueprint for Reform, which you can go on the county's website. One is getting all the technology together so that the computers for the county and the computers of the city sync up. Secondly, it's to get all the stakeholders together and make sure that we are working together to reduce crime by knowing what's going on with each offender and why they're committing their crimes. It does little good to simply sentence them to another term in the jail if we don't address what's causing them to commit crimes. The county and the city believe that we can hold offenders accountable, address what's causing them to commit crimes, and save money and prevent future crimes in the future. And that's the heart of smart justice, just making good decisions, working all together across the city and the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Haskell.
The office is already doing all of the evidence-based smart justice type criminal justice reform alternatives right now, and we are looking at expansion. We're doing, again, through the state legislature, which is very forward-looking and has implemented reform since the mid-1990s. This office is doing criminal justice reform now. We are saving the county taxpayers money now. I would take issue with the 74%. It's not that high. Only Mr. Beggs is the one quoting 74%. Even in the blueprint it says 70, and I have reason to believe that's a little high. But as these programs become more available and there's more evidence supporting them, we will do the expansions. In the blueprint it says that the expansions of the program shouldn't be done until they're rigorously evaluated. And this is not only a process that should happen before implementation, but it should also happen before expansion. And we will follow the guidelines of the blueprint in that area.
Okay, thank you. Are there any, I feel there's a little bit more to be said here. So 30 seconds of additional information or rebuttal here. Mr. Beggs?
Yes. So first of all, we wouldn't need a blueprint for reform if everything was working just fine. The 74% number comes from the county itself. We need to make real strides in getting a system differently, and the current system is not working. It's broken. So we need someone like myself who's experienced reforming the police department, the jails, getting us a municipal court that's implementing those reforms. I have battled those kind of bureaucratic problems and obstacles, and that's what we're going to need to get where we're going.
Mr. Haskell?
We've had this issue come up in the previous debate. It is far too harsh of a statement to say the system is broken. It's not working as well as it could, and that's the reason that we came up with, or the county and the city jointly came up with, a blueprint for reform. The evidence-based practices that the office is using right now, again, are saving the county money right now. And as they become more widely available, and again, they're researched and rigorously evaluated per what the blueprint says, we'll expand them.
Okay. Move on to a little bit different issue. We know that the city of Spokane has spent many years working on establishing a police ombudsman program. What are your thoughts on establishing a county ombudsman program to provide law enforcement oversight? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Haskell, 1 minute.
This came up the previous debate, and I would be in favor of the county looking at the establishment of an ombudsman. It's very important to the citizens here in Spokane that there be police oversight, and I do not believe that there would be any reason or impediment to establishing it at the county level. If it's good for the city, it's good for the county, and I believe that that would be a very favorable development for the people of Spokane and Spokane County.
Okay, Mr. Biggs.
I'm one of the people that led the charge to get a police ombudsman, and I fought hard to get it in place. In fact, it's my complaint that's pending. It's going to be the first independent investigation done by the office. I totally agree that we need to have civilian oversight ombudsman for the county because the citizens deserve to know what's going on and to have input. It's going to be a challenge, though. It's a very difficult issue, nationwide, statewide, and in Spokane, it's taken us years. And it's going to take someone that knows labor law, knows how to work with all the different departments, and get the job done. And I've done it once, and I believe I would be able to do it again as the prosecutor.
Okay, in the past, there's been concern about backlog in the courts. Just want to explore where we are on this issue. Has there been any significant change, and are there other measures that you could envision in making the process through the courts as expeditious as possible? And we begin with Mr. Biggs.
Yes, you know, all across the system in Spokane, people have been working hard to decrease court congestion. But the problems are just almost overwhelming. Probably the best program that's currently in place is ECR, which gets people, if they're going to be pleading guilty anyway, they get them to do it in 1 or 2 hearings instead of 5 hearings. But it really is going to take almost a completely different principle, not putting people through the system that don't need to be there. 1/3 of all misdemeanor charges in Washington are driving while license suspended in the 3rd degree, basically not paying your traffic tickets and keeping driving. That's a criminal charge and requires us to use all sorts of criminal and court resources. If we decriminalize that and don't prosecute it as a crime, we can still hold people accountable and not clog up the system. So it's going to take a broad approach to make it even less congested.
Okay, Mr. Haskell?
There was a backlog some years ago, especially at the felony level, that has been resolved through conscientious charging procedures and resolution, as my opponent mentioned, early case resolution. That was started by our office, and it is working very well. As far as the driving with license suspended, it's true that it does take up a lot of the charging, but both the city and the county have DWLS diversion programs where essentially the relicensing requirements are set and they don't result in a criminal conviction, and they're moving a lot faster that way. It's up to the state legislature to determine whether or not they want to decriminalize it at the legislative level. I know there's been some movement for that on the west side of the state, and there are some supporters of it over here, but for the time being, they're being decriminalized essentially through practice by offering diversion.
Okay, thank you. Now I want to take a look at the use of plea bargaining. For our viewers, let's explain how it's used, and then if elected, what use would you make of plea bargaining? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Haskell.
Well, the county signs up in excess of 4,000 new felonies every year. We have 12 Superior Court judges, 52 weeks in a year. At any given time, several of the judges are doing other dockets, and there's judicial conference, and they're on vacation, that sort of thing. So there's actually a very limited number of trial slots, if you will, particularly at the felony level. And so plea bargaining is an essential part of the criminal justice system. And ECR plays its role in early case resolution of felonies where appropriate, low-level offenders, nonviolent, and that sort of thing. For the others, what we do and what I would advocate doing is you take a look at what the criminal history is, what this person's been doing. Are they violent? Are they chronic? What opportunities have they had for rehabilitation? And then you also look at what they're doing today, and you have to protect the public. Those are the people that, if we're going to go to trial and not reach a plea bargain, they're the ones that we're going to use that valuable trial time for.
Okay, Mr. Biggs.
You know, the elected prosecutor is the one that sets the policy and supervises the deputy prosecutor. So the elected prosecutor isn't doing plea bargains, but he or she is making sure that our prosecutor's office implements the values of our community. And I think what the blueprint for reform says, and a lot of us have been arguing for a long time, is that we need to spend more time assessing people before they get sentenced, before they enter into a bargain. We need to find out how dangerous are they. We need to find out what will stop them from committing crimes in the future. If we spend more of our resources on the front end, then we can design a plea bargain that will create more safety for all of us and at a lower cost. And that's really the heart of smart justice, and that's the attitude and the value that I'm going to bring to the office from the top. And we've got some great deputy prosecutors who will implement it as long as that standard is set from the top.
Okay, at times juveniles get tried in adult court. In what circumstances would you consider a remand of a minor to adult court? Mr. Beggs?
In our system in Washington, it's considered for the most violent and the dangerous crimes, especially for older juveniles. The first thing that needs to be done is to assess whether or not the juvenile court has the tools that they can use to rehabilitate the person and or punish them. And so the most serious of crimes are going to be considered for adult court. That's an important process that needs to take place. And again, it's the same thing I was talking about. Assess on the front end, not just a reaction, but an actual assessment, so that we can use the court system to rehabilitate who we can and incapacitate who we can't for the better good of the entire community.
Okay, Mr. Haskell?
I agree that the statutes require that the process of declining, if you will, a juvenile and moving them to the adult system is reserved for the most serious of crimes. And I do believe that it would be helpful to do this at a declination hearing. Certain crimes are what they call auto-decline. I'd actually like to see those reduced so that we actually have a court weighing in on whether or not a juvenile is transferred to the adult system. But recently, the legislature changed the law that also decreased even for those juveniles that do get their cases adjudicated in the adult side, to reduce the sentences that are available because of the fact that considering the youth and the fact that the juvenile brain just isn't as developed as the adult brain. But nonetheless, there is, through the juvenile system, a great risk needs assessment program going on right now, and I would support that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to do one short answer one here. We've talked about a lot of changes. Is there, in the prosecutor's office, is there one other change that you would like to talk about here tonight? Mr. Haskell, and we're going to do 30 seconds on this one. Mr. Haskell, you're first.
Well, actually, there's a number of changes that I didn't get to on the inside. I'll take advantage of this opportunity. On the inside, I want to set a few more guidelines. Again, as my opponent indicated, you're talking about top-down policy, but I want to give them a few more written guidelines. I want to empower the supervisors and give them not only the responsibility but the authority to make sure that the deputies are operating within the general guidelines, but other than that, to empower them to work within those guidelines and support them as they do their jobs.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Beggs.
One change that I would like to work on, and it's in the blueprint, and that is that we're using the jail as a warehouse for a lot of nonviolent, mentally ill people who are there not because they're serving their sentence, but because they don't make it to court on time. According to the jail commander, 50% of the people in the jail are not dangerous. Only 17% are serving a sentence. So we could spend our resources more wisely by using electronic home monitoring for those who are not dangerous. We can keep track of them at $8 to $10 a day safely instead of $130 a day, save millions of dollars, and invest that in drug court.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll go to closing statements for each of you. 30 seconds. We'll begin with Mr. Beggs.
I've been a lawyer for 23 years, holding wrongdoers accountable by winning jury trials and arguing at the Supreme Court. I'm the only candidate to actually personally represent crime victims of domestic violence, drunk driving, sexual assault, wrongful death. I have more experience practicing law, managing attorneys, and developing the smart justice reforms that we need to create a safer community at a reasonable cost. I'm asking for your support and your vote to be Spokane's next prosecuting attorney.
Thank you. Mr. Haskell.
I beg to differ with my opponent. My office represents real victims every day, and we don't do it for a paycheck. We do it because it's our job, and we love our job. I'm the only candidate with actual experience in the criminal justice system. I have more experience in the criminal justice system than Mr. Beggs. I have more criminal jury trials, and I am actually doing the criminal justice reforms that Mr. Beggs has only talked of. I'm asking for your support and your vote as the only experienced prosecutor and the voice for criminal justice safety in our community.
Thank you, and thank you to our candidates for prosecuting attorney. They are Breean Beggs and Larry Haskell. Thank you.